Welcome pilots. In this video, I will be breaking down the second half of Task A in the Private Pilot ACS. This area covers pilot qualifications. In this video, I will discuss medical certificates, the documents you need to carry to exercise private pilot privileges, and Part 68 of BasicMed. I'm excited to be here. I hope you are too. Let's begin. (61.23) discusses medical certificates. This regulation is very wordy and quite lengthy and has a lot of details on the specifics which is required for each type of pilot. For example, a commercial pilot may require a higher class medical than a private pilot, but I won't get into all those details here. What I have done is I have created a visual representation of the duration of a medical based off of your age. This is the most likely thing that a CFI or examiner may ask you about. To begin, I will discuss how long your medical lasts if you're under 40. I'm under 40, surprisingly. And so my medical, which is a first class at the moment, lasts for about 3 more months. In total, my first class medical lasts for 12 months. After that, it downgrades to a third class medical. I will then have a third class medical for 48 months. If you do the math, 12 months of my first class medical plus the 48 months of my third class medical add up to 60 months. If you're under 40, no matter what, some sort of medical will last 60 months. So just do the math and you can figure it out. For example, if I had gotten a second class medical, the second class medical would have downgraded after 12 months from the date of issuance to a third class medical. Then I would have had a third class medical for 48 months. 12 plus 48 equals 60. It's a simple way to remember how long each medical lasts. Now, if you take a look, you'll notice that the first class medical and the second class medical have the same duration. This means that if you are issued a first class medical and you're under 40, you do not downgrade to a second class medical. You go all the way down to a third class medical. Now, that is not the case if you're over 40. If you're over 40, your first class medical only lasts 6 months, but a second class medical lasts 12 months, and a third class medical lasts 24 calendar months. If you're over 40, your medical will always add up to 24 months. For example, if you start off with a first class medical, you will have a first class medical for 60 calendar months after the date of issuance. Then you will get a second class medical for another 6 months after that. Finally, you will have 12 months of a third class medical. If you look, the first class and the second class medical have different lengths. This is to show that after you're done with your first class, you do downgrade to a second class medical if you are over 40. I hope this visualization helps to show what happens when you have a medical and how they downgrade as time progresses. Now I'm going to be discussing the documents you need to carry to exercise your privileges as a private pilot. There are only 3 things you need to remember for this section. and they can be found under the regulation 61.3. The three things you need to carry is your private pilot's license, a government-issued photo ID, and a current medical. Those are the only three things you need to have to act as a private pilot. If you want to hear a funny story about the questions I was asked during my oral exam, stay to the end of the video. Now, because this is a simpler topic, there isn't much else for me to say, so it's time to move on. Finally, the last topic under Task A, Pilot Qualifications, is Part 68, BasicMed. In reality, BasicMed actually covers quite a few different regulations. The details on BasicMed are all held within Part 68. 68.3 states that a private pilot must undergo a medical education course, and 68.5 states that a private pilot must undergo a certain medical examination. 61.23 states that in order to operate under the BasicMed privileges, a private pilot must have held a medical certificate sometime after July 14th, 2006. Now you might be wondering, what's the point of BasicMed? BasicMed is meant to allow pilots who cannot obtain a medical certificate to still operate as a private pilot. With that, there are a few limitations, and these can be found under 61.113 or the Privileges and Limitations Regulation. This regulation states that a private pilot cannot be in command of an aircraft that can carry more than 7 occupants, including the pilot. It also states that that aircraft cannot have a maximum takeoff weight that is above 12,500 pounds. Along with those restrictions, there is also a speed restriction. The aircraft cannot exceed 250 knots indicated airspeed, and it cannot climb above 18,000 MSL. The flight also has to be contained within the airspace that belongs to the United States. BasicMed is quite a complex topic, and it covers quite a few regulations. I suggest checking each one to make sure that you have a thorough understanding of what BasicMed is all about. Now it's on to cover how I studied and the questions you can expect on your check ride. Unfortunately, like I said in the previous video, Task A is very regulation heavy. That means that there isn't a very easy or simple way to study. The thing that I found most effective was creating flashcards. And in my hands, I have two different flashcards that I use to study. The first one discusses medical certificates and the documents you need to hold as a private pilot. On the back, I listed the duration of each medical certificate depending on if you are over 40 or under 40. And it states the 3 documents you need to have as a private pilot. On this flashcard, I list the regulations where I can find more details on BasicMed. At this point, I had a rough idea of what BasicMed was, how to get it, and what it's meant for, but if I were to experience any questions about it, I would have had to consult the FAR. Now, every day for about 5 to 10 minutes when I had free time, I would go through these flashcards and a couple others I made for different sections, and I would just go through them until I felt confident. This can be really helpful and can create a routine that you can do before you start thoroughly studying or after you're done with a study session to just calm down your mind and get into a habit. I also think that the visual representation of how long each medical certificate lasts is a great way to think about the duration for medical certificates. I think mentally, if you can picture each duration lining up against the issuance of the medical and the time that class expires, it can be very helpful in determining whether or not your medical has expired or what class of medical you have. And now I'm going to talk about some questions and a funny story that happened during my oral exam. Alright, it's finally time for the story that I promised you. Now, during my oral exam, I was super nervous. And after I had talked to my CFI, I walked upstairs and I entered a room with the examiner. Now, the first thing he did was take a look at my logbooks and the maintenance logs, but that was technically before my exam started. Then, as soon as the exam started, he asked to see my flight documents. I panicked and my mind was empty. I handed him my medical and a few other papers I had prepared in a binder. After a while, he gave me a blank look and then I put it together that I had not given him all that he had needed. I then handed over my driver's license and my student pilot's license. After that, we managed to progress through the rest of the oral. This was an important lesson because I didn't fully understand the term flight documents. This can also occur during a ramp check when an FAA inspector comes to see if you can fly an airplane. They may also ask to see your flight documents, and that is once again talking about your government issued photo ID, your private pilot's license, and your medical certificate. Now, some questions you can expect during your oral exam. The examiner is definitely going to take a look at your medical, and when he or she does, they will notice what class medical you have and when it expires. They will then probably ask you if you know what class medical you have. They will also try and test to see if you know what happens to your medical as time passes and when it expires. They may also test to see if you know what happens if your age is different. For example, my examiner asked me what would happen to my medical if I was over 40, even though I'm not. You can also be asked if another photo ID can qualify instead of a government photo ID. For example, can a library card work? Can a student ID work? And the answer is no. Only a government issued photo ID can be used as a flight document. In regards to BasicMed, I didn't experience any questions about it, but that doesn't mean you won't. It's important to know the parts of BasicMed, who it applies to, and how you acquire it. Just know where you can find the regulation for each part, and that should help you during your oral exam. Now, after this video, we are done with studying Task A, Pilot Qualifications, and I just want to commend your progress during your studies. I know it's a lot of work and it can be very stressful. I was panicking during this part, but you're doing the right thing by putting in the work, and I'm very proud of you. We're going to keep moving on to cover Task B and the rest of the Private Pilot ACS so that you can be the most prepared for your exam. I hope you have a good day, and I'll see you in the next video.